Hi everyone, this is Piyush Ranjan. I am the founder and chief consultant of Management Masters. We are a boutique admissions consulting firm for the top MBA programs. And in this interview series, we have today with us Astha Bhatnagar. She was an MBA candidate at Duke Fuqua and she graduated 2 years ago. And currently she's working as a product manager at Amazon. Right, so something of a dream job for a lot of our candidates, right? So without further ado, let's jump right into it. Welcome, Astha. Would it be possible, could you just give a brief introduction about yourself to our viewers?
Sure. Hi, my name is Astha. I graduated from IIT in India with a BTech in electronics engineering. And while I enjoyed learning about hardware development, I also felt the curiosity to learn more about businesses and how they work. So I recruited for consulting instead, and I got this great job offer from Capgemini Consulting as an analytics consultant, where my role essentially was to dig into volumes of data to make strategic decisions for our clients. And then seeking bigger challenges, I moved to BCG in a similar role. After spending a couple of years in consulting, I decided to get an MBA just to further expand my business expertise and gain some leadership skills. That's when I came to the US, went to Duke University, Fuqua School of Business. Had an amazing experience there, interned at American Airlines, got a ton of free flights, so that was great. And and yeah, after my MBA, I was convinced that a product management role would be the right role for me, as it allowed me to marry my tech skills with my business acumen. So yeah, I recruited for product management roles and got a PM role at Amazon. And yeah, it's been close to 2 years now while I've worked with Amazon, and I've got the opportunity to launch great products. So that's a bit about me.
That sounds amazing. Right. So just to dive deeper into your pre-MBA work experience, where you came from a consulting background, right? You mentioned you're working at Cape Gemini and then you moved to BCG, both in analytical consulting roles, right? So could you tell a bit more about that and how did that help you decide, or rather, what led you to decide that you would want to move forward with an MBA instead of continuing with that analytical consulting or moving to a consulting sort of role?
Sure. So my story is unique because, yeah, I mean, I was in the analytics consulting. I was on the analytics side of consulting business, which was separate from the strategy side. So although I did get to work with the strategy team, which was the core consulting team, I felt that it wasn't possible for me to make a move from analytics to strategy directly without having a business degree. And after I spent a couple years, I also did realize that while consulting is is a great industry to work in, it's like the core of business. It's quite the work-life balance is quite difficult to manage and sustain. And after working 3 years in consulting, I realized that post my MBA, more I want more of an opportunity that allows me to have a balanced work life. So that's the reason why I took consulting out of my consideration for roles after my MBA. But yes, I do feel like the industry is pretty attractive if you are able to work extremely hard, 12 hours each day, or even more than 12 hours. Yeah, it's a great industry to work in. In terms of your question of what led me to do an MBA, it's actually interesting because I kind of always knew I wanted to do an MBA, and it wasn't after working in consulting that I figured out, okay, maybe I should do an MBA. So, I mean, it's interesting when I look back, even when I was in the second year of my BTech, I bought that book, GMAT, and I was always interested in I enjoyed organizing and managing events in school. I enjoyed reading up about startups, and I had a group of friends who were extremely enthusiastic about building their own businesses, being entrepreneurs. So I felt drawn towards those things, and that's why I decided to even like go on the consulting path to further do an MBA. So that was always the plan.
Right, makes sense, and it's interesting to see how you mentioned that you started studying for GMAT already in the second year of your college, right? So just a very quick question, like when did you finish off with your GMAT? Was it like quite soon enough
Yeah.
before you started working on the
So
application?
I was naive to buy a GMAT book in the second year of college because I didn't know that at that time I didn't know that I required certain years of experience before I could apply for an MBA. So yes, I did not like. Of course, I studied a bit back then, but yeah, I never gave a GMAT right away. So I gave my GMAT um, after I spent like 1.5 years at BCG. So before just
So just
applying for
before
business
applying,
school.
okay, all right,
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. So let's coming to the application part, right? Because the MBA application part itself, it's a huge thing to take care of, right? So and there are various aspects that are involved in that. So that would involve the GMAT, the working on your essays, the choosing the B schools that you would want to apply to, right? So let's tackle each of these. So when it comes to the GMAT preparation or the GRE preparation, was there anything special that really stood out for you, or that you would want to suggest to future aspirants? How should they go about their GMAT prep?
Regarding GMAT, I feel like there isn't a lot that you can do with excess preparation. So I took 3 months to prepare for GMAT, and GMAT is an exam where after a point you'll hit a point of no, like the returns wouldn't be great. So the questions are very conceptual, and you will answer them based on how much you are capable. Like you will answer them based on your capabilities. So I guess take 3 months to get acquainted, to practice a bit, to understand the type of concepts they try to examine in you, and then yeah, I feel like don't put too much time because more and more practice will not give great returns. After a point, the returns will diminish.
Yeah. So just to maybe rephrase that, or like a lot of GMAT tutors, what they usually talk about is, it's much more about the way you study for the GMAT rather than the amount of practice that you do. Right.
Yes,
So just doing 1,000 questions for GMAT prep is probably not going to help you enough,
yes,
rather than just understanding why you're solving a particular problem and how to solve the problem.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Understanding the concepts is key. More practice will not really help you after a point. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the second part of this obviously is a lot about choosing the right business schools, right? And yes, you got into Duke Fuqua and you went there, but how did you choose which schools to apply to?
Okay. So in my criteria, I had a couple things such as location, the culture of the school, the types of placements, and also overall my background and my GMAT score were key to identifying which schools were stretch schools, which schools were easy to get into. So I applied to 5 business schools at that time, and the top school for me was Duke and Virginia Darden and Michigan Ross, because I had 3 years of experience, which was relatively less as compared to other candidates. So I was not confident in my ability to apply to like M7 schools, but I guess my advice to potential candidates is that you should definitely apply to one of your dream schools, because guess what? I thought Duke was a stretch school and I got it. And at that point, I was like, oh, but I didn't apply to any schools better than Duke. So maybe I could have gotten there into, and I didn't try. So yeah, definitely apply to at least one dream business school, even though it seems like a stretch opportunity. But yes, location was a key because many cities in America are extremely cold. Some are extremely hot. So weather's is a consideration for a lot of people and people like me. Then the school culture also, because if the school cultures are so varied. For example, Fuqua is all about collaboration and leadership, and some other schools are not so much about that. So if you're an introvert, maybe going to Fuqua would be a challenge for you because people talk and they're like always together. And yeah, you always, yeah, extremely enthusiastic and extroverted people go there. So yeah, so I guess culture is also important, the types of placements too, because I also considered, for example, UCLA because I was trying to go into product management. So UCLA is great school because it's in the Bay Area, so you have access to tech companies there. So with the mix of all those factors, yes, I applied to 5 schools, and those were my criteria.
Makes a lot of sense because you covered like almost both the parts of it, right? So obviously that the score matters and the kind of career placements matter a lot. But these are the more quantitative aspects of the school selection process. But then you also covered some parts of the qualitative, which is about the school values and the kind of people or the kind of qualities that the schools look for, right? So being introverted or extroverted or collaborative or a very competitive nature, like again, everybody has their own preferences, right? So that's something very, very interesting that you touch upon. The final part of this that I want to really ask about is how did you work on the essay, especially for Fuqua, right? Because they have that one question which is, I think, the favorite of almost every single person who applies to Fuqua. What are the 25 most random things about you? Right. So
Yeah.
how did you go about these essays? How did you tackle those?
Yes. So, yeah, I mean, 25 random facts could be could turn into a disaster at times if you don't write the right kind of facts. I guess facts should be a balance of your professional achievements, any volunteer work, your extracurriculars, as well as something that's unique about your personality. So I guess some of my top facts were about the volunteer work I had done, and how I made an impact. Then there were some facts about how in my class, in my IT PHU class, I was the only person who went into consulting from the electronics engineering department. So it showed the kind of drive I had for the business industry, and for business roles. And then there was just some fun facts about me, about how many places I traveled to and what were some interesting things that I've learned, what are some interesting conversations I've had, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I mean, some of it should be based on your resume and some of it should be fun. I'd say way more towards professional achievements than fun.
Right.
So
But was there something like where you're trying to also bring out the kind of qualities or values that you have in your essays, or you're just focusing on how to bring out the professional aspects and your drive for business?
I guess the values I support were uncovered in the facts that I shared about my volunteer experience, and also about my professional experience. So, for example, Fuqua values collaboration a lot. So, talking about places where you work with big team, you managed a team of people, and then also talking about the impact that you made, kind of indirectly points in that direction because you don't want to be all explicit about it, that you're just talking about the things that Fuqua takes into
Absolutely.
account. So
Absolutely. So, considering all these three different things, or even other things about the MBA application, like what would you say was the most sort of difficult part for you during this application process?
essays, clearly the essays were the most difficult. Like GMAT wasn't as difficult. Being an engineer, quant was like pretty easy. English was also easy. I guess essays were hard because it takes time to really get into the mindset of building a story, and I had not done that kind of thing before. Americans are used to it, but Indians, we don't do that. Like nobody asks you in your interview questions like these, especially when you're just out of your undergrad and have a technical degree. So I mean, really thinking through my experience and how to put them together in a way that makes sense, that brings out your personality, and that brings out, like you said, the values that matter to you. And thinking through really, like, even some really small things that you have done in your past could be highlighted in these essays. So yeah, it took me a lot of time to think through. And trust me, when I was writing random facts, after a point I was done with like 22, I was like, just going to write something. I don't know what I'm going to write, but no, I just kept on pushing hard to figure out more stuff from my past life. So yeah, essays
Yeah.
were the most difficult.
Absolutely, totally agree. It's a lot of effort which goes into, and you rightly mentioned Indians, we are not really used to that sort of an application process, right? A lot of candidates who come to us, they usually have this mindset. Let's get a 750, 760 on the GMAT, and your life will be set. You'll be getting into Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, and that's all that matters, right? But
That's not true. Yeah.
that's not true. All right. So moving on from your this pre MBA journey, that seems very interesting. But then moving on more to Duke Fuqua, right? So what would you say was the best part about Fuqua, which has had the most impact on you?
Yes. I think Fuqua opened my eyes into how to just be like more genuine and also market yourself effectively, like both at the same time. So I saw that there were people who made real impact and they talked about it with passion. And that's something that, like I said, I didn't have prior to my MBA, but a key skill that, especially in US, I would say, that takes you a long way to just be able to recognize each of your achievements and talk genuinely about them and be genuine. You don't have to like create craft stories. It's you as a person. If you're at you must have done some really good things, awesome things in life. So uh, like yeah, I guess that's one thing that I learned. And the other thing that Fuqua has a great focus on is leadership. um, I think I think I learned a lot just about leadership by being at Fuqua, because Fuqua, for example, they talked about the concept. We all know about IQ and EQ, but Fuqua also talks and teaches you about the concept of DQ, which is decency quotient. So how can we be more decent human beings overall? So I guess it kind of opened my mind to a different dimension of how to be a great leader. If whenever I become a manager, right now I'm an individual contributor, but as when I become a manager, or even like right now in my current role, when I manage cross-functional teams, how should I be more empathetic towards my colleagues? How should I, you know, there's just so many leadership qualities that you learn at Fuqua, and you you get into the mindset of figuring out for yourself how can you be a great leader and continuing to do so in your career. So I think that those were the two key things that like stood out for me at Fuqua.
Amazing. And as an international student, right, were there any unique challenges that you faced during this MBA journey?
Uh, yes. So, as an international student, nothing pertaining to Fuqua as such. I would say, in general, I had never been to the US before. So, I definitely had my inhibitions of, hey, is this socially acceptable? What should I say in this situation? Are these American peers going to judge me on doing this? And so on and so forth. But trust me, those inhibitions didn't help me at all. So after a point, I had to learn that I just have to be my genuine self, and yeah, be open-minded, accept the challenges there, and move on. Like instead of thinking about all these things. And Americans, I find in general, are pretty independent people, so they don't like look. They're not there to judge you, or they don't care about what you're doing. So yeah, I mean, it was initially I had a lot of inhibitions. I started off by being a little introverted, but then eventually I opened up, and there was a bit of cultural shock, but yeah, all of it got it was all well, because, and especially for Fuqua, I would say 40% of the class is international, so that gives you a lot of confidence, because there's just so many people going through the same thing. So yeah, it's nice to just be open with them, and they'll
Absolutely.
appreciate. Yeah, they'll help you out.
Absolutely. So coming back to the kind of like the goals that you had, right? You wanted to get into product management, and that's something that you really wanted to explore. But at the same time, you also mentioned that at Fuqua, there's so many things going on because it's a completely student-run culture. The entire thing, the entire student body is always organizing so many events. There's so many things happening, basically, right? So, how did you manage to like focus your MBA towards getting into what you wanted?
Yeah, sure. So I say when I joined Fuqua, I had a mentor from the Indus group, which is the Indians at Fuqua group, and he told me one thing which I felt a bit, I wasn't sure of that advice, but yes, it worked out for me. And he told me this: see, Asad, do not participate in clubs to like write it on your resume. Participate in clubs if you really want to like give back to the club or learn from the club, because writing about I was the vice president of women in business club will not help you get the job. So I think that was a very good advice that he gave to me right at the start, and hence that kind of changed the way I looked at things. So I did not participate in clubs like to get product management role. I participated wherever I felt the need to like learn something from the club members or give something back. But yeah, so once the thought was clear, I didn't feel the unnecessary urge to go to every club and be visible everywhere. I networked with my classmates in class and after class and during lunchtime, so on. But yeah, I didn't feel like a unnecessary push to go to all these clubs all the time.
Now, moving towards a bit more about your career and how did you land a job? And currently that you're working at Amazon, right? So, how would you say your the Duke MBA helped you find this job, or did it help you much in your career search?
Yes, so I think I was among the lucky few students who did not have to go the path of off-campus recruiting. I got both my internship and my full-time job through Duke campus placements. So I can go more into details of how, if you want.
Yeah, sure, please.
Okay. So American Airlines, so companies like American Airlines and Amazon, they do come to campus. So there's always an opportunity to just directly meet with the folks directly from that company. And you can network with them, build connections, and they'll remember you. That's how the process goes. Um, if they find you like a likable candidate, and if they think that you're smart, they'll remember you. So that's how it works. So yes, my experience was on campus, and especially for Amazon, it's less so about less so about networking, more about your resume. So it's a black box, to be honest. You just drop your resume in and you get an interview invite or you don't. But that's how the process was, and yes, it was on campus, so there were jobs reserved for fewer students. So
Right.
that was
And
helpful.
just to dive a bit deeper into that, because this is not something which happens very frequently, I guess. Right. So how does the campus recruitment part work in at Duke Fuqua? If you could shed some light on that, and how is that different from India, like in general as well? So if you could shed some light on that, I think that would be very helpful for our viewers.
Yes, it's it's extremely different from anything I saw in India, because because recruiting in America is extremely networking based, and all these recruiters and people from those companies come to campus. There are groups of students who like one recruiter is surrounded by like students. Every student is trying to show that they're capable, they're smart, they're likable, and they have all the qualities that these companies are looking for. So it's a little bit tense. It makes the situation a bit tense because you are among a large list of um, candidates that are trying to get that job, and everything is networking based. So you have to talk to those people like 10 times. I'd say it's more for consulting and investment banking than for tech. but even for tech, some of the companies, not Amazon, but some other companies like Microsoft, you have to build those connections, because ultimately those are the people that will say, out of the 400 students at Fuqua, 10 stood out to me because they showed this real passion for this job in the conversations I have had with them, and they've stayed in touch, and they've wished me Christmas. I don't know, so many things to show that you are passionate and you're likable. So it's it's a different process. And yeah, it can be, it's enjoyable for some, and it could be extremely stressful for some.
Yeah. And what did you like? Were there any big challenges that you faced as an international student during this process?
Yes, I think the only challenge I faced as an international student was there was there were only 10% jobs that were open for international students. So if there were like 100 on the portal, we only had like 10 or 15 open, and that really caused a lot of stress, because you would see all your American friends getting placed really quickly, and all the international students struggling for just those 10 to 15 jobs that were on the portal. So and I wouldn't say that this is something Fuqua specific. This is something that is pretty much prevalent in all business schools in America, given the limited number of companies that hire internationals. And the weird fact, or the unfortunate fact, is that each year the number of companies hiring internationals is like slimming down. So my second years had more options than I did. Now the folks that are in the school right now have lesser options than I did. So that's the kind of sad reality that makes you stressed out.
But just to dive a bit deeper into this, like, does that mean, let's say, if somebody is looking at US schools for, obviously you don't just go for an MBA for the degree, but you also go for the career opportunities. So does that mean like the career opportunities are absolutely slim or slim to none? Or is there still like a hope if you're able to, navigate these recruitment areas in a better way, or in a more sort of like optimized way, like how the Americans do it?
Absolutely. So I don't think that the opportunities are none. I talk about Indian classmates. All of my Indian classmates have a job now. None of them were left unemployed after graduation. But having said that, it did take them a lot of stress and a lot of hard work to get those jobs. And some didn't get the kind of jobs that they, wanted after business school.
Mhm.
So I guess that's the reality that you have to be open to, like, accepting. And also, one of another important thing, just like getting a job right after business school is important, but then also something that you should keep in mind, or any applicant should keep in mind, is that you only get two chances at H1B. And thankfully, Fuqua has STEM, an option for STEM. So all of my classmates have a 3-year OPT, and they get four chances, I believe, for the lottery. But I have seen, like, that I have a friend at Indiana Kelly Business School, and he said that he told me recently that 3 of his friends had to go back to India because they did not get the H1B approved. So I guess that's another challenge that any Indian student in America would face. So overall, the loan is a huge part of it. So if somebody isn't sure, then yeah, definitely think twice before making that investment.
Absolutely, makes a lot of sense. Also, it sort of uh, becomes very, very. Thank you for pointing that out, because it's very important for candidates to know, and we've been trying to also tell this to our candidates as well. It's not that you can go to the US and just expect that you will have a job right after your MBA, right? Just on the doorstep, like it happens in Indian
Yes.
schools. But it's also not something which is impossible. It could be possible. There's a lot of factors which go into this, uh, a lot of hard work required, and then also a slight bit of luck, right?
Yes.
Uh,
Yes.
cool. So, one of the last questions that I have before we jump into our new section for the rapid fire. So, what would you say that you wish that you had known before you had hopped on into this MBA journey of yours?
Um, One thing that I would have known, that's an interesting question. I guess I pretty much don't have any regrets as such. My experience, to be honest, went much more smoothly than other candidates in my class. But I guess one thing that I should have known was like the inhibition factor, or the being an international factor that I talked about. That yeah, nobody is there to judge you, and you should feel absolutely free to be yourself. And yeah, you shouldn't have any inhibitions. Be your best self and just be confident in whoever you are. And yeah, that's the only thing I would have gone told myself when I just joined Duke, when I was feeling like, oh, I'm so new to all of this, I don't know how it's going to be.
All right, sounds pretty good. Now we move on to our latest section. This is something new that we have introduced. We call it the rapid fire round. No second guesses for what exactly is it about. So we'll just ask you like 5, 6 questions, and try to answer them with one-word answers or maybe maximum one sentence, right? So we'll keep it very quick. So let's start with that. What was the biggest myth about MBA programs that you realized after getting into Duke Fuqua?
So I guess the biggest myth is that GMAT is everything, or applications is everything, or your past work X is everything. I think it's a combination of pretty much all those things together. So yeah, I guess that's the biggest method.
All right, makes sense. What was the most helpful resource that you found for product management at Duke Fuqua?
Absolutely, the tech club, because they laid out every aspect of the interviewing process in detail. They laid out what the role was, and tech club was run by second years at Fuqua who had gone through the process themselves during their internship phase. So yeah, they were extremely helpful in helping all the first years out.
Right. What was your most favorite part of the application, of the MBA application process?
I think my favorite part was the interview process because it was just so genuine, and they were like genuinely finding out what I've done in the past. And I guess since I had already written so many MBAs, I already had the content to speak to. So yeah, that was the most pleasant part of the application.
Perfect. What would you say has been the most valuable skill that you have acquired during your MBA?
It is how to market yourself, and how to highlight your achievements. Something that I didn't have. I tried my best during the essays, but I think now I'm pretty good at it. And I can like write an essay much better form than I did last time. Yeah.
All right. Uh, a piece of advice that you would like to give to aspiring students?
I think I covered it. I would say definitely apply to stretch school. Don't we as Indians don't we kind of try to underestimate ourselves. No achievement is good enough. But yes, don't do that. Be confident in your capabilities. No matter how many other candidates you see are like also applying and they're also good, you like just believe in yourself and go for it. Let the school make the decision.
Cool. And what was the most fun club or event that you were part of at Fuqua?
Yeah, so at Fuqua, there was an event called, I guess, try. I don't remember the name of the event, but it is something that happens during the orientation. They take you out to a park where there are lots of activities like climbing up a wall with the help of your students, or going through a tunnel, or like difficult walking on a rope. So they were like challenging activities, which were basically to build deeper relationships with your classmates and develop trust between each other in helping each and every person go through those challenges. So it was fun, enjoyable, as well as meaningful.
Perfect. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful having you, Astha. Thank you for sharing so much, and I think it's going to be an incredibly helpful interview for the future aspirant who sees this.